So the time has come for me to finally talk about Mai Natsume for once as a proper discussion video. But you know what? I don't mind talking about Mai. I actually wanted to finally get her video done for a while now. Before I even start the video, funny enough, Mai was actually mentioned a few times in the series before she ever appeared in person. The first time she was actually made a first mention was actually in the Chimerical Complex manga. She was also talked about by Noelle in Continuum Shift, and she was talked about again by Noelle during the Chronophantasma dinner scene. Also, another fun fact, did you know that in BBTAG that Mai actually heals from Teddy's poison curry attack because it references her super taste ability. And, she has to eat garbage food because garbage food is good for her because of her super taste ability. I mean, I know the ability is stupid, but it's a cool reference. Now, before I even get to the video proper, I have to say that I have to ignore most of the fluff involving BlazBlue Remix Heart and Variable Heart respectively, because the majority of Remix Heart is just slice of life fan service moments that don't matter in the grand scheme of it all, and Variable Heart isn't completely translated yet, so I'm going to have to exclude most of Variable Hearts until the manga's translations are finished, which means the only parts of Variable Heart I'll be touching base on is like the smaller bits, the stuff that lead into Central Fiction, or at least the stuff that matters. And yeah, and since I'll probably do a Variable Heart video once it's completed, but yeah. So now we get to finally talk about Mai. Mai was originally born as a male who went by the name of Mai Hazuki. The Hazuki family being the 8th family within the NOL's duodecim, with its branch family being a group of assassins known as the Kirihito family. Now, why did I mention the branch family so early? Well, it'll come into play later, but what I'm going to say now is that Mai was trained in the Kirihito style of assassination, as well as becoming acquainted with a child of the family, a young woman named Shiori Kirihito. Again, I'll get into more of that later. So anyway, as Mai Hazuki, I'd say he, because this was at a point where Mai was still a dude. As Mai Hazuki, he was the heir to the Hazuki family, and the family valued power above all else, and the embodiment of that power above all else ideology is his father, Hoichiro Hazuki. Hoichiro Hazuki is a man I already made a video about, but what you really need to know is that he's a current patriarch of the Hazuki family, as well as the one and only person in the world who's able to fight Azrael and repel Azrael all by himself. And Hoichiro's obsession with power kind of drove both him and his son apart, though his Mai's mother, Rin Hazuki, was always sweet and caring. So, you got tough, rigid father, sweet and kind, soft mother. So, balance going on. So later on, Mai had come into contact with a grimoire known as the No-Name Grimoire, and it was in the Hazuki family library. And it had transformed, the No-Name Grimoire had transformed Mai from a man into a woman. And because of that, had left the Hazuki family and was placed within the Torifune Military Academy, changing her name from Mai Hazuki to Mai Natsume, because now she was a woman, and she really wasn't allowed in the family anymore. She kind of just called her name by Mai Natsume. Plus, with the name Hazuki, she'll probably attract a lot of attention. They can't really have that, so, yada yada. So Mai's mother, Rin, would often send letters to check up on her, though Mai would never really respond to them because she really couldn't bring herself to do so. So Mai spent her days within the military academy, now adjusting to acting like a woman, while also becoming friends with characters like Makoto Nanya, Tsubaki Yayoi, Noelle Vermilion, and a young woman named Kajun Feikot. Kajun Feikot is actually an original character to this manga, but one day I'll make a video on her. But anyway, she also made friends with several other characters, such as a young man named Taro Sasagai, who is the cousin of Kagura Mutsuki, and Jin Kizaragi. So, she became friends with more characters too. So, around that time, Mai also developed an ability known as Super Taste, which allows her to understand the feelings of the food she eats as well as the one who made the meal, though it has a drawback of Mai not being able to eat normal food anymore, and as a result, is the only person able to essentially stomach Noelle's death dinners with no problem, though Mai honestly enjoys Noelle's cooking, so, you know, good on her for that one. So, yeah, the only person who could really stomach Noelle's food, I mean, other than Hazama, but, you know, this is Hazama we're talking about, and Ozma's insane. I mean, he's not even, you know what, I have a theory about that. Okay, like, as a simple, okay, so I'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, I'll get into that, my little theory about her Hazama, but I'll get into that in a minute after I keep talking here. Anyway, Mai spent the majority of the Remix Heart series just trying to handle her situation, as she was now a woman and has even to come to accept who she was. Mai at this point already accepted that she was a woman, but she was always afraid of what her friends would think of her, considering that she's been constantly lying to them about her true nature, that she was a member of the Hazuki family, that she was a woman, she was originally a dude, my bad. You know, she's been technically lying to everyone, and on top of, you know, like getting over her attraction to women, she started to have a thing for guys now, such as Taro, and having to deal with those kind of new feelings. Though in the beginning, she still has nosebleeds in front of women, because, you know, still the guy nature of the character still comes through. Anyway, throughout Remix Heart, Mai and her friends, also known as Team Remix Heart, have spent the majority of their school days traveling around and searching for various types of grimoire within Torifune, in the hopes that it will lead them to the all-powerful Azure Grimoire, which Mai believes can turn her back into a man. I just wanted to inform you guys that, well, maybe you already remember, just wanted to remind you guys that, you know, despite the name, grimoires in the BlazBlue series do not take the form of books. Just wanted to get, I mean, there are grimoires that take forms of books, but not all of them, for obvious reasons. So, the various grimoire that Team Remix Heart came across are, and this is going to be a while, anyway, the Evolution Grimoire, which has the ability to make things evolve, but it cannot make things change its species. The Emit Cryas, which is a grimoire that reveals the truth of one's being when looked into, but it will absorb those who stared too deeply into it. The Conversion Grimoire, which can convert things, and it was believed that it could reverse Mai's super taste, and it was used to turn Noelle's food, like her actual terrible food, into something actually good. The Regulation Grimoire, which can affect the weather through its scrapbook pages. I can never pronounce this word. The Hypnagogia Grimoire, which allows one to enter another's dreams. Oh my god, I can never pronounce it. The Aquavalentis Grimoire, which could transform things into gifts. The these grimoire names. The Idesqui, this grimoire, which is one of the more powerful grimoires, as it holds a small piece of the Azure within it, and it has the ability to grant the power of creation to the holder that has a goal to pursue. And around that time, they were looking for the Idesqui grimoire. Mai had met Ragnar the Bloodedge around this time. They were searching for the grimoire together, but then Mai realized that Ragnar had a piece of the Azure, and, you know, they made sure around that time. So now I want to mention the original grimoire that started all this, Mai's grimoire, the no-name grimoire, as it was the one that Mai possessed at first to allow her to change genders in the first place. The grimoire itself actually fused with Mai, which allowed her to turn into it turned her into a species, this new type of individual known as a Remix Heart, which is a fusion between a human being and a grimoire, and for whatever reason, the vessel for the no-name grimoire has to be a woman, and no, this isn't explained at all. We can only assume that the grimoire itself changes the person's gender so it can accompany the body that it changed. No, it's not explained at all. It's just an excuse for Mai to be a girl. Funny enough, this grimoire for once is actually a book. And it has the ability to copy any grimoire by placing the code of a power within it, and it is able to copy the Azure Grimoire. So essentially, Mai has this broken grimoire that's allowed to copy any ability to essentially turn it into other grimoire. So yeah, the no-name grimoire is kind of busted, especially since it's fused with Mai, so technically she has the ability to copy anything she wants. The no-name also has no limit, as it seems, because it can copy multiple abilities at once, so again, take that as you will. So even after becoming a Remix Heart, Mai would wonder if her friends would even accept her now in the first place. Now, it was one thing that she felt like she was lying to everyone, considering that she was originally a man, and, you know, all that. But now she wasn't exactly human anymore on top of that. And things really only got worse for her as time went on. Like, now she was lying to her friends about being originally a man, but now even on top of that, she wasn't even classified as human anymore. But she did get along well with Makoto, who was a demi-human beastkin, so, you know, it wasn't all bad. You know, Mai could see people for who they are, but will they see her for who she is? So there's that. But anyway, back to the no-name grimoire. The only reason I even mentioned this in the first place is that Mai was able to come into contact with a piece. Sorry, my bad. The reason that I even mentioned that this is the final grimoire that Mai herself managed to get, because she made contact with something known as the Intermediary grimoire, as Mai, who is the no-name grimoire, had fused with the Azure fragment within the Adesqui grimoire, which turned Mai into the Intermediary grimoire. So basically, the Azure piece left the Adesqui grimoire and made contact with the no-name grimoire, which transformed it into the Intermediary grimoire. Now that she's the Intermediary grimoire, Mai had the ability, by kissing someone, and then pass that ability that they had onto another person by kissing them, though it is later revealed that it is the result of Mai tasting the attributes of the person, essentially using her super taste in conjunction with the Intermediary grimoire, which essentially transfers powers from one person to another, which uses Mai as a catalyst to do so. It sounds dumb and gross, but that's how it works. So yeah, Mai has to kind of taste a person, grant their abilities, and taste another person and pass on the abilities they gained from the first person. So gross, but that's what she has. So what do I have the right to judge about abilities? I don't have any cool abilities like Mai, so what do I have a right to judge? But anyway, Mai had become somewhat friends with a professor at the academy who went by the name of Cypher Albar, but I'll get into him later because he's actually, you know, later down the line. Anyway, her old friend Shiori Kirihito, I can finally talk about her now. Her old friend Shiori Kirihito made her way to the military academy under the guise of a weak and frail woman in order to get closer to Mai and her friends. But in actuality, Shiori was a deadly assassin who was assigned to kill Jin. So over a bunch of anime shenanigans later, Mai had managed to beat Shiori using Shiori's own Kirihito assassin type techniques against her, because I mentioned earlier that Mai was also trained in the art of the Kirihito style assassination techniques. So Mai had used a poison kunai that Shiori had on herself, and Mai essentially took the poison kunai and used it against Shiori. And Mai had sucked the poison out of Shiori to prevent her from dying from the poison, but in doing so allowed Mai to learn of Shiori's sad past through her super taste, because through her super taste she was able to understand the thoughts and feelings of what she's tasting. And Mai began to sympathize with Shiori, and they became friends, though Shiori now worships Mai and has fallen in love with her. So, wacky Yuri shenanigans as BlazBlue has. So yeah, that's how she solves the whole Shiori situation. So later on in the series, Mai had encountered another assassin known as Chachakaka. She was essentially this, I can't even pronounce this word, Gyaru. Like, how those Gal characters with the dark skin, like this Japanese girl with the dark skin. That's essentially what she is, because she kind of dresses like pink and like she's essentially a Gal character, but in Kaka form. Though Mai was able to make Chachakaka retreat, because Chachakaka essentially just gave up fighting Mai and just left because she knew Mai was too strong. So behind Mai was actually Relius, who was impressed by the power of her soul, and then after he said that, he just essentially dipped. So he's like, you're a cool soul, goodbye. So later on, Mai was also attacked once again, but this time she was attacked by a creature that was created by Cypher, who had actually saved Mai from getting hurt in order to earn her trust, as she was unaware that Cypher had created the creature in the first place. Cypher revealed that the monster was attracted to grimoires, which Mai had revealed to him that she was now in fact the Intermediary grimoire. So Cypher decided to give her a device that would help monitor her powers. But in actuality, the device was just for him to use in order to keep tabs on Mai at all times. So later on, Mai and pals were attacked yet again on a survival trip by another monster. And Mai was able to communicate with her grimoire. She's able to do that for some reason. The no-name grimoire / the intermediary grimoire is now sentient for whatever reason. The point is she was able to communicate with it and activate the full power of her grimoire to overpower the creatures that she fought and kill it. So around this time, Chachakaka had managed to get a hold of the Emit Cryas grimoire, the one I told you earlier that's able to reveal the truth. And she had used the Emit Cryas to reveal that Mai was originally a man. So after Mai defeated the creature, after the whole conflict was over, the device that Cypher gave Mai had knocked her out, which allowed Cypher to take Mai, and he revealed his whole almighty evil plan. And Cypher's evil plan was that he was going to use the people within the Academy as a catalyst to create the almighty Burning Red Grimoire. The Burning Red Grimoire was actually this super powerful grimoire that was created by Nine. It was supposed to act as a pair to the Azure Grimoire. And, Mai not wanting that, wanting to protect her friends and whatnot, decided to fight back Cypher. And the first fight back Cypher, I call him Cypher, like the Pokemon. Cypher, not Cypher. God damn it, it's so hard to say his name and not think of the Pokemon Cypher. But anyway, during the fight that he and Mai had, Cypher had managed to create an incomplete version of the Burning Red Grimoire through Mai, because she was essentially a remix heart, so he was able to do that. But through the combined might of her and her besties, her and her friends, they had and her friends came to her aid, and after they knew the truth of Mai originally being a man through the Emit Cryas, but they came to care for Mai regardless of her gender, and didn't care because they were still her best friend Mai. They didn't matter what she originally was, as long as they were just she was still the same Mai. So through all that emotional stuff, they teamed up together, all the teams together, and they overpowered and beat Cypher, and all was well. And then it was later revealed that Mai had lost the power of the Intermediary Grimoire once the Azure Fragment was removed from her body. So that's the end of Remix Heart. And now I have to slip into Variable Heart, which is, I can only mention certain points of Variable Heart. I can only mention the bullet points that even matter, because, again, the whole entire manga isn't fully translated yet, so I can only mention bullet points. So let's just start from top to bottom. So Mai meets Colonel Mayfang Lapis Lazuli of the NOL. Mayfang desired Mai's body because, being this no-name grimoire, was able to copy all these abilities and, super powerful and whatnot. Mayfang wanted some of that. Mai was actually being hunted down by the NOL's Zero Squadron, which Colonel Mayfang Lapis Lazuli was actually the leader of. So Kajun decides to bring Mai to Sector 7, where she would get her a new outfit, and finally her iconic spear, the Galliaciferous Outseal. Mai and Kajun would later come across a prime field coffin that has a young girl in it, who Mai would later become named Belle, because of the big bell on her, big bell around her neck. Later on, Mai goes through a training arc with her mother Rin Hazuki and her father Hoichiro. Then, now Mai is strong enough, she will later have a fatal showdown with Colonel Mayfang. She kills her with the Outseal, and Mai finally presumably graduates the military academy. So that's Variable Heart in a nutshell. Once it's fully translated, I'll actually talk about Variable Heart, but until then, I can only talk about the bullet points that really matter. Now, as for Central Fiction, Mai doesn't do much. She meets and protects Noelle from Hazama at one point, as well as she meets Relius. And Mai has serious beef with Relius, because he really sees her as nothing more than an experiment. Though, considering how little Mai and Relius have anything to do with each other outside of their first meeting in Remix Heart, because they don't really do much in Variable Heart, I can only assume either this is a result of Relius' scenes in Central Fiction being trimmed down, because Mori has said himself that he had to cut Relius' scenes in half, otherwise the game would be twice as long. So I can only assume that the whole weird, the rage that Mai has against him, a lot of rage. She was pissed at him before they even had major beef with each other. And I can only assume that this was because of either Relius' scenes being cut, or this is something involving Relius post-Central Fiction that we don't even know of yet. But considering Mai talks about the Day of Reckoning, or aka Doomsday, in Central Fiction, this is like before all the Embryo nonsense, so I don't know. I don't know. But Mai did learn that Relius was actually the one who found the military academy, and he did so for the sole reason of finding strong souls for his experiments. And obviously that pissed off Mai so greatly because she was seen as nothing more than an experiment, especially due to her rough time trying to handle, not only being, her being transformed due to the grimoire, but now she was this human grimoire hybrid, and so she wasn't even classified as being human anymore. So, obviously that didn't sit well with Mai at all. So, Mai was super pissed off at Relius for just seeing, like, not only creating the whole military academy, but just doing it for the sole purpose of turning people into experiments and whatnot. So, here's that. So that's my story bits in a nutshell. And I guess I could do a side mention of what her weapon is. So I can finally talk about the Gallia Cypherus Outseal to go through it real quick. Now, I mentioned before that Mai wielded this spear, the Gallia Cypherus Outseal, which is a legacy weapon replica. Now, I already made a video on legacy weapons before, but to quickly go over the Outseal possesses the same ability as the Ezioid's Immortal Breaker, which allows Mai to kill immortal beings. The Outseal dulls the pain of its wielder. The Outseal is able to change the direction to home in on a target, because you've seen that in gameplay. It also happens in the manga where Mai is able to change the trajectory of the Outseal in order to home in on her desired target. The Outseal lacked the limiter at first, because Nox Nictoris and legacy weapons have a price to use on them, and they need limiters on them so that the burden of using them won't be too great and horrifically damage the user, like the Bulwark, because the Bulwark has a limiter on itself to control Noel's emotions, and legacy weapons also have limiters as well. So yeah, the Outseal didn't have a limiter at first, but the soul of Belle, a girl that Mai met around the beginning of Variable Heart, was able to become the limiter, so Mai could easily use the Outseal without feeling too much of the effects. Obviously I mentioned the legacy weapon video that legacy weapons are able to stave off phenomena intervention. So technically Mai would be immune to phenomena interventions, even though the Outseal is just a legacy weapon replica. It's just a copy, and etc, etc. But yeah, that's Mai in a nutshell. Honestly, I think I explained everything that had to do with her. That's Mai in a nutshell. Honestly, that's all of her. I don't have the highest opinion of Mai. I don't hate her necessarily, but she's not my favorite character. She's kind of there to me personally. I'm not gonna lie, Variable Heart, Remix Heart isn't that good of a manga, so that's your first impression of Mai. And while Mai isn't a bad character, she's not really anything special. I think only thing that's special about Mai is the fact that she was a dude originally turned to a woman. That's the only thing people really remember about Mai. That's it. The only major thing they really remember about her. But it's a big shock. Oh man, she was originally a dude, and then you get the dumb jokes popping up that everybody, oh, she was a dude, right? Which I'm so sick of hearing. But yeah, the point is, that's Mai in a nutshell. I don't have much of an opinion on Mai. She's okay. She's not my favorite character, but she's all right. I don't believe she should have been the main character of a manga before, though, because Remix Heart is not very good anyway, and Mai being the main character of it doesn't really change much. It doesn't really make it a good series, because Mai is already part of a kind of weak manga. Variable Heart gets a little bit better, her character-wise, but it gets better, but Mai just starts... it's weird because, you see her more of her personality flourish in Remix Heart, despite Remix Heart not very, very good, and now Mai comes to terms with herself, and she has to handle the extra shit, the stuff that's, Variable Heart feels more BlazBlue centric. It feels more like a BlazBlue series rather than the Yuri manga that Remix Heart was, but at the same time, she's she's bland even more so in Variable Heart, because now she's just this, she's, where I'm out.